Okay, let's see. We've had the 60s Spider-Man series. We had two Spider-Man series in the 80s. We had a regular Spider-Man show, and we had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Then we also had Spider-Woman, which is hilarious, by the way. Definitely check that out if you want a good laugh. We had, of course, the 90s Spider-Man show. Then we had the other 90s Spider-Man show, the one where he goes to space and lands on a planet of furries. I'm not making that up. Then we had the MTV series, which, despite its use of pretty dated CGI, was a bit underrated, in my opinion. Then, of course, we had Spectacular Spider-Man, which is arguably the best one. Then there was Ultimate Spider-Man, which left a lot of people divided. And now, here we are, decades later, with yet another Spider-Man cartoon. Because the world really needed this. Before we begin, just like with the last Rob Watches, if I sound a bit funny in this video, it's because I'm getting over a cold, and I've had too many delays recently, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do this video and just power through it. So the new Spider-Man show on Disney is called Spider-Man, or Marvel Spider-Man, just to be as confusing as possible. And it did feel kind of strange because they had a Spider-Man show going, and in fact they had a whole animated universe going with the Marvel shows. They had like Avengers and Spider-Man and so on. And even though I didn't really care too much for those shows, it was really cool that they had a pretty solid, somewhat consistent animated universe going on. That is, if you don't count Hulk and the Agents of Smash, which is a whole other thing. But because we have a new Spider-Man in the theaters, and now that Disney pretty much owns the rights to Spider-Man again, for the most part, we gotta have a new Spider-Man show. Now, the key with a show like this, with a franchise like Spider-Man, is that when you keep adapting it, you gotta every time do something different with it, and they certainly tried. The first thing I did notice about this show is the character design. It's very similar to stuff like Avatar and more recently Voltron Legendary Defender. I think the same character designers worked on this one as well. And it's funny because I can't get over the fact of how much Peter Parker reminds me of Pidge. It's not just the design, which they do look very similar, but the fact that Peter Parker is a genius, and they have very similar genius moments. They have very similar speech patterns. They figure things out the same way. I actually have a headcanon now that Peter Parker is actually an ancestor of Pidge and Matt from Voltron Legendary Defender. Shame you didn't pick up that license, Disney. So with this Spider-Man show, they seem to be more focused on the school, my favorite. And it doesn't look like, at least not right now, because I've only seen the first 5 episodes as of this video, that Peter Parker is going to be the photographer for the Daily Bugle like he usually is, which is a shame because then we're probably not going to get a Jameson in this, because Jameson is usually the best part of every Spider-Man. And it seems like because they're focusing mostly on the school, the villains of the show are mostly going to be either students or teachers. They've already established characters like Shocker as a young inventor, and they had Rhino, who was one of Peter's classmates who gets mutated. And in probably the strangest twist, they had Doc Ock as one of Peter's teachers. And he's very young in this version. And they did establish a bunch of other things like the symbiote, which will no doubt become Venom at some point. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be happy about some of Peter's classmates, which include Miles Morales, who's everyone's favorite new Spider-Man. Then there's Anya, who I think is supposed to become Spider-Girl at some point. And of course Gwen Stacy, who I believe they've confirmed is going to become Spider-Gwen. So I'm assuming where the direction of this show is going to go is we're going to eventually have a whole team of Spider people. And like I said, I've only seen the first 5 episodes as of this video, and I do know for a fact that Tony Stark and Bruce Banner are also going to show up at some point in the series. So I guess maybe they're trying to build a new animated universe, maybe? One thing I did kind of like about the show is they showed a lot of flashbacks with Uncle Ben, and they were really good scenes. They were scenes that helped Peter get through all of his hard times. And what was most surprising about it is Patton Oswalt was the voice of Uncle Ben. Usually he's synonymous with a lot of comedy characters, but it's really nice to see him actually do a very serious role for once. And I gotta admit, even though I don't like shows about school, I do like shows about smart people, and they're really playing up the intelligence aspect of the characters. Specifically in episode 5, I really liked what they did, because when one of Peter's classmates gets mutated into Rhino, they stop him, and all the students kind of get together and try to figure out, you know, what happened to him and how to cure him, and they had this whole big scene where they tried to develop an antidote and everything, and stuff like that I really like. You know, now that I think about it, I'm getting kind of a Big Hero 6 vibe from this series, because it's about, you know, a school for geniuses, and it's about kids trying to solve problems using science and using their brains. I find that kind of interesting because Disney's about to premiere a Big Hero 6 animated series really soon. So overall, this was okay. It's just okay. I heard a lot of people are not really liking it very much. I think it's fine. It's not blown me away yet. I think maybe it's because I've lived through so many iterations of Spider-Man that, to me, this one just feels like another one. Although I imagine a lot of people are going to say this is going to be their first Spider-Man, which is fine. I mean, as an introduction to Spider-Man, I'd say this show is not too bad, but just know that there are a lot of other better Spider-Men out there. Spider-Mans? What's the plural of Spider-Man? But I really don't have much else to say about it right now. Maybe it'll pick up somewhere later down the road, but again, as of right now, I think it's fine. So that's all I got for Spider-Man, or Marvel Spider-Man, or whatever you want to call it. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think of it, and let me know what your favorite version of Spider-Man is. My name is Rob, and have a wonderful day.